Welcome to In China with Michelle Zhou. Manufacturers have long known China to be a leader in their industry, but now the world is recognizing China as a business center for companies, market traders, education, and artists. It's no wonder that the economy has grown to be the world's second largest. In our program, you'll learn from the thought leaders and professionals who have lived in both the U.S. and China and continue to do business there. Now, here is your host, Michelle Zhou.
Welcome to In China with Michelle Zhou. I'm your host, Michelle. I'm the founder and CEO of Pacific Technologies Consulting Group. We help American and Chinese organizations learn from each other, bridge their needs, and grow their businesses internationally. You can contact me at our company website, ptcgconsulting.com, and I always welcome you to connect me on LinkedIn. Today, I invited Mr. Aaron Rose to the show. He's the board member, corporate advisor, and co-founder of multiple companies. And Aaron has a really long history with China. Today, we would like to talk about is now a good time to invest in China. Aaron is a very experienced investor. So this is one of the topics I want to tap into. So welcome to the show, Aaron.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to be with you.
As I said, I know you have done a lot of things and you have, I think it's close to 20 years working experience with China or in China. You have been in so many different companies with a long list of titles if I look at your website. So could you first introduce yourself to our audience? I think especially from the angle that your connection with China.
Yeah, I started my professional career 27 years ago as an entrepreneur and investor. And then about 2003, so 17 years ago, I had the opportunity to do my first business deal in China. And that was through actually wearing two hats, one as a consultant and one as an investor through a project of the World Bank to create a municipal bond in the province of Jinan in northeast China. So ever since 2003, I've had some business activity through multiple businesses in the Middle Kingdom.
Wow. So that's many different things. As I said, you have a lot of different titles. Not everything is related to China, but many different things. Can you just briefly also tell us about the different things, the different categories of things that you are involved in?
Yeah, I mean, as an investor, I traditionally have invested in what they call the ICT sector, information and communications technology, starting back with the dot-com days of the 90s. And I invested in a mobile network operator in South Africa in 1995. So previously I was involved in a real estate venture in Latin America. So my career got started internationally very quickly. Over, almost 30 years, I've been either investing in technology companies in the Middle East and in Asia, not of course China, but also in Southeast Asia, Korea, Japan, Australia. I was involved in a company in Australia for a number of years, and Europe. So all continents except for Antarctica, and so that's I've been investing in companies, and then I've been and also as an investor, but then taking a role as co-founder. So there are companies where I will make an investment, but I am also becoming an active member of the management team. I'm involved with two or three companies now that have a presence as a co-founder, an active co-founder that has a presence in China, as well as other emerging markets. And then, I mentioned the consultancy. Every entrepreneur, investor also has the consulting hat, and I enjoy getting involved with companies that are trying to expand to new markets, China included, and navigating the trials and tribulations, as they say, navigating the waters in these new markets.
Wow, worldwide traveler.
Yes, I have visited 94 countries and I have worked in 67 of the 94 I visited. So yeah,
Amazing.
I've been very fortunate, very grateful.
Hmm. And I can see how many things a person can do from you, right? As an example, wearing many different hats, involved in many different businesses and across different industries.
Yes. So you have to be a lifelong learner. I mean, I love learning new things, and it comes down to the team. It comes down to the people that you're doing business with, and building those relationships and building the trust and learning from each other. And so I've been lucky. I've been surrounded. I had a mentor of mine early in my career who said, "Surround yourself with people smarter than you."
Mm.
And so, if the pie is 100%, I know that 2% pretty well. But I need to surround myself with people that can supply that 98%, and I've been fortunate in that area.
And I know you are also a blogger with your very busy life, very busy traveling, all these different things. You managed to find time to blog. I read some of your articles. It's very interesting. I want to start from here, your blogging. Uh, your blog is named Solutions for Sustainable World. And you share very useful
Yes.
information and the resources there. You also have many articles related to China. When I read it, I said I really studied it, and I think it is very informational. So can you tell us why you started this blog back in 2008, and what are typical things that you write about?
Yeah, I started the blog for really three reasons. One is that my parents really didn't understand what I did for a living. They, like, well, and I was consulting Microsoft. I spent a year in Brazil in 2005, and I was traveling all over Latin America for Microsoft. And my father says, "Well, you work with computers," and I'm like, "No, I do business strategy. I help with strategic planning and identifying new markets and coming up with solutions in the markets they're in." And so my father really didn't understand that, and my mom, understood a little bit better of what I did for a living, but still, trying to fill in the details and explain it. So I had friends of mine also, "Aaron, what do you do and where are you going?" And so I did it kind of saying, "Well, this is what I'm doing. This is where I've been. This is where I'm going." The other reason I did it is because I take a very philosophical approach to business. Another piece of advice a mentor gave me early in my career is make informed decisions. And someone had asked me, "Do I worry about making bad decisions in business?" And I said, if me or my colleagues are making informed decisions, I don't lose sleep at night if they're the bad decision. Not every decision is going to be the right decision, but they're informed. Our odds of making a terrible decision, a decision that's going to bring down the company, is reduced. So the blog forces me to read the material that I'm writing about. And so if I'm writing about an 80-page report, I've actually read every page of the 80 pages, and it's forced me to kind of hold myself accountable in the knowledge. And then the other part of it is that, as many blogs are, it's kind of a soapbox. And if I have a particular opinion about something, this allows me to kind of represent and flesh out my ideas and my beliefs on a particular topic, whether it's geopolitical or socioeconomic issues. And then it provides a portfolio. It's basically my portfolio. I'm not an artist. I don't play music, but it's a portfolio of my ideas and my experiences that I can show to clients of my consulting business or to my colleagues. If we bring on a new hire like about China, then one of the things that new employee is given is a link to my blog, and specifically those links about China, and they could get a better sense of how I look at the world, and my perspective. And of course, anything I write about is open for debate. I never claim that I'm right. I have strong opinions, but I love healthy debate. I love, and I'm willing to change my ideas, if I hear a better argument. So that was really the purpose of the blog. The first entry was about, I had been doing work in Africa. I had been doing work in Darfur, which was going through a terrible human rights conflict at the time. My job as a consultant was to come up with economic development programs and policies to build up the economy in Darfur so people would have jobs. But I attended a conference in Washington, D.C., where I used to live at the time. And I thought, well, this will be an interesting topic. And then topic number two was a result of me attending the 2008 Summer Olympics, and which I had the pleasure of doing in Beijing. But people were asking me, what did I think about Beijing and China holding the Olympics? Because it was a big deal. It was a big deal for China. And so, yeah, so that was the reason why I started the blog. But it really is first and foremost for me to kind of digest the information that I read.
Yeah, I found it's very informational because it has a lot of the reports that you read, and then you take the key points and post it there, and it has links to many different other things related to it. So for me, I see, oh, this is great. If I want to know the China 5G, the trends, what's going on, your blog is a very good starting point for me to find the related information if I only have like 3-4 minutes. And if I have more minutes, then you have links. I can just click and see the full report that where you cited, you pull the information. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Of all this research that you are following and blogging about, and of so many things that you are involved in, as we just talked about, right? I think you probably have observed and thought a lot about what's going on in the world. Let me just pull it back. Let's look at China.
Sure.
What are some top trends that you have observed about China that you can share with us?
Well, there are a number of different trends. I guess one since you mentioned 5G, there's the technology trend. There's the trend that 5G, I remember in my career when 4G, came online, and now we've got 5G, and before we know it, I think it'll be 6G someday soon. But in the technology sense, definitely seeing the research and development in the area of 5G, and really what that will allow. 5G is just the highway, it's the pipeline, but it will provide business opportunities in Internet of Things or connected devices, IoT, as they call it, artificial intelligence, and really mass communication. So definitely 5G and the things related behind that. China is going through a transformation from a manufacturing driven economy to a consumer driven economy. And so you're seeing with the rising middle class. China on a per capita GDP is still poor. I think it's still, and I can't remember what the latest number is, but it wasn't that long ago where it was only like 1/10 on a per capita GDP, 1/10 of Japan's. Now, overall, China is the second largest economy. I guess some surveys says it's larger than the U.S. That's because it has 1.4 billion people. But on a per capita GDP, it's rising. The wealth per individual is rising. And so you're seeing the consumer economy really starting to grow. And it's really still at the very early stages right now. So you'll see it in services, consumer services, as well as consumer products. And so that is something when I look at the 2020s and into the 2030, the next 10 to 15 years, the rise of the consumer economy, which will include technology services as a result of 5G. So those are a couple areas that I see that's really changing today in China.
Oh, that's great. I think it's time for us to take a quick break, and we will come back. And when we come back, I want to hear from you as an investor, what you think about these trends and what's the connection to the investing business.
You are listening to In China with Michelle Zhou. You may also send an email to info@ptcgconsulting.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Now we are back. Before we took the break, you talked about the top trends on top of your mind, right? You have observed through research and through what you have seen in China. Now, I want you put on the investor hat. Help us to think about why those trends you mentioned that are, you think is important, and what opportunities have you seen through these trends from an investor's eye?
Well, the one trend I'm seeing is definitely like I said, the services, technology services. One area is education services. Education's always been big in China, and you look at companies like New Oriental, which is Beijing-based, traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Every young person I meet, the young Chinese person I meet in the United States, have been a student of New Oriental, either learning English or taking SAT prep classes or GRE. But you're starting to see more of the digital services being delivered. And education services is one area. Automotive is something that, as an investor, that I'm looking at closely. The electric vehicle, number one, very big. You've got a number of entrants, and not just Chinese companies like NIO, but Tesla, right? Tesla, has a big facility in Shanghai. And then you'll have autonomous vehicles. You'll go, that'll be the next generation. So that's an area. Tourism. I remember it wasn't that long ago, I think Germans were, on a per capita basis, were the biggest spenders in tourism. I think China has by far exceeded that, and both domestic and international tourism. You go to Vegas, you go to New York, you go to San Francisco, Hawaii, and now you're seeing it in Dubai, and shopping holidays and safaris in sub-Saharan Africa. So tourism is another big opportunity for investors. So those are the areas that I see are the investment opportunities. And then, of course, what we call the IoT, but in a sense specifically is applied to smart cities. And so you're going to have better technology on better use of energy, better traffic management, better use of water, as water is becoming a very, very scarce commodity globally, China included. And so the IoT and the industrial IoT is there. And then cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, China, which is reputationally has had its challenges in cybersecurity. But they are now, Chinese companies are realizing now they need to keep their systems secure. And so you're starting to see cybersecurity take on more of a global meaning, and that's creating an investment opportunity.
That's many different areas. And as an investor, you see the opportunities when you connect it to the trends. One thing, when you talk about all these different industries, everything makes sense to me. One thing I want to ask more is the tourism now. Before the COVID-19, before the pandemic, I think it's a rising, right? It's an industry where you see so many Chinese going abroad and spending money, enjoying all these different shopping as well as the experience. Now with COVID-19, it changed everybody's life. It changed a lot of those related industries. What's your projection for this industry in the future? And
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Long term, I'm optimistic. I mean, yes, 2020 is a tough year for the tourism industry, and unfortunately, you're going to have many companies worldwide. If you're dependent on the tourism sector, you'll see bankruptcies, and you'll see some consolidation. But long term, I mean, I'm optimistic we will have a vaccine to COVID-19. And again, if you're investing in 2020, which if you have capital to deploy to put to work, you have money to put to work, 2020 could be a very good time to invest in the tourism industry because things really can't get much worse than they are now. But when you invest, you need to be looking many years down the road. So when I look at my crystal ball, I'm thinking 2025 and beyond in the tourism industry, and that's where I get optimistic. I think we'll have a vaccine to COVID-19. COVID-19 will be ancient history for hopefully for many of us soon. But then the tourism numbers will rebound, and they will rebound stronger. You will see Chinese tourists back internationally in 2021 and beyond. So, but you have to really think about the future and kind of predict what the future is going to look like. But it will rebound. That I'm confident. So it's just a matter of when and how quickly.
Okay. You have done a lot of projects or co-founded companies related to businesses with China. I think I would like to hear from you your personal experience, right? When you are working with people on China-related projects, or when you were in China physically, or anything related to that. How do you describe your experience generally? And maybe give us a few stories so we know how you look at China and the Chinese.
Candidly, it's been nerve-wracking. Doing business in China is not easy. There are countries today that you probably can even make more money than you could in China and not have the headache. In a country like India, right? I was on a webinar this morning that was produced by a law firm that specializes doing business in China, and the topic on today was about India. And my colleagues and I are looking at India much more closely. I mean, India is rising, but with China, it's been interesting, both interesting good and interesting bad. The good side is that it's an exciting market. From as an American doing business in China, again, I take a philosophical approach to doing business, which also means understanding the history. I think Americans or non-Chinese people, my European colleagues and friends, I would group this as well. To really understand doing business in China, many Westerners see China as a fairly new country, right? About 70 years old, let's say. But it's really politically, it's a new country that's wrapped around one of the world's oldest civilizations. And so I think you really need to understand the civilization part of China to understand kind of the psyche, the mentality of business, of trade. And so I've been able to be successful in China because I've comprehended that. I've comprehended the traditions and have some sense of the dynasties and the history. And yeah, the politics, that's kind of a new chapter of China. But so it's been exciting. It's been great opportunities. I love the egalitarian in China, meaning men and women. Women are in position of power. Probably should be more than they are, but it's better than it is in the United States. You see more women CEOs. You see more senior managers. This comment might upset my male colleagues, but women work harder, and I think they make smarter decisions generally, but I think in China as well. So I feel better when I'm at the table with a woman because I feel the decisions are smarter. I think they're being more well informed. Again, the notion of making decisions. So that's an aspect of China that I've really enjoyed. Most of my colleagues are women. A couple of the companies that I'm a co-founder of, the majority are women. And that is something different in China than I've experienced in other markets internationally. So that's one. And then there's some of the negative sides of China. And to be quite candid, the intellectual property theft. I had a company where we hired a local partner and they stole our technology. They
Wow.
stole our IP. So for friends of mine that say it doesn't happen, it does happen. It happened to me. It happened to a company that I was a majority shareholder of, and this was a company that we had hired, and they, and it was based in Beijing, and it's accidental. We found out they had stolen our IP. So
when was that?
That was about 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm.
So yeah, probably about 4 years ago, 2016. And the IP theft, people say, did you try to sue in court? Well, no American company is going to be successful suing in China courts. I mean, Chinese courts understandably really do favor the Chinese companies. And you can maybe say to some sense that might be true in the US if a Chinese company tried suing an American company. So the take legal recourse was difficult, and it was a lesson learned. I mean, it was a big lesson learned. But the fact is, it does exist, and the reason I mention it is because some of your listeners and friends of mine say, no, that doesn't happen anymore. Well, the threat of it still exists, and I'm still getting reports from my attorneys of clients that his firm is representing that it is still happening. And so that still is a concern about doing business in China. The other challenge of doing business in China is really understanding on who you're doing business with. I've had people come to the negotiating table trying to do a business deal, and they say they're the CEO or they're the director. And the reality is the person really making the decision is 5 layers deep that you'll never meet. And that's still an ongoing problem. Who exactly are you doing business with? Who exactly is the decision maker? And that's still a challenge. It's still a big challenge doing business in China. And then the other part, which my Chinese friends don't like to hear, but it's a problem. A lot of the documents that's presented in front of me, a lot of the corporate documents and financial documents, because I'm trying to do the due diligence of who we're a lot of it is fake. A lot of it is fraudulent documents, and that's frustrating. And so you're spending a lot of time and a lot of money trying to figure out what's real. I'm an advisor to a company that was having something manufactured in China. The CEO went to the Canton Fair, met a vendor there, said, we can manufacture what you want. They had these beautiful brochures. This was 3 years ago. Beautiful brochures of their facility. And when I had a colleague of mine in Shanghai drive 3 hours to visit the facility was not even close to what was advertised on the brochure. I mean, it wasn't even close. So, those are the challenges of doing business in China. Things have improved again since 2003. Things have improved, certainly. But I think for China to really accelerate in the position that the leaders are trying to position the country in as a global leader, geopolitically and social economic, more reform is required. And that's where I lose, my patience gets thin. I'd like to see more reform today and not tomorrow. So again, it's an old civilization. It takes a long time for things to evolve. But if you have the patience and the courage, it can be done.
Sounds like it's very different than here in the US from business standpoint, right?
What if I can actually add to that real quick, Michelle? I mean, one thing that's different is that there's 2 things that frustrates me about doing business in China, and it's called, the word is reciprocity. It is easy, as it should be, for anyone to come to the United States and establish a business. Anyone today can online through the secretary, like if you want to establish a business in Seattle, you can form an LLC or a corporation online through the Secretary of State's website.
Right.
And you don't need to be a citizen. You need a registered agent and that has to be a resident in the state of Washington. But you don't need a local partner. You can do that very easily. Establishing a business in China is not that easy, and I wish it was easier. And that's something that I wish did change yesterday. That's one different. The other one, I was a co-founder and the president and CEO of a company called ROI3 Inc., where we created mobile applications for people in China to learn specialized English terminology. One was in medical English, and the other one was in aviation English. And our business model was licensing our applications to enterprises. And we did that primarily because that was our only choice. You could not at the time, and I don't know if things have changed, this was just a few years ago, I couldn't publish an app on a China app store on my own. You have to have a license, and while there's no written rule, but the Chinese government would not give non-Chinese companies that license. Whereas anyone from China can publish an app on the Google App Store or Apple App Store today. Those are the two differences that are very frustrating when people in China says, Aaron, come do business and more business in China, when the playing field isn't equal, and that needs to change, and that's from my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I think even today, register a company in China, it's a lot faster than before. Before it was like many months. Now it takes, I don't know how long, but probably a couple of weeks. The process still goes much more complicated than here in the United States. You just go to the website and half an hour, 1 hour, you submitted all the information, then you've done. It is very different. So I really appreciate your insights as somebody who have been in China for so many years and have done a lot of business there, that you share both sides of the view. I know you mentioned you have co-founded companies in China or with your Chinese partners. Can you tell us one example of how you come up with that idea and why you did that and how the company is going today?
Well, yeah, I mean, one is Eco, which is officially a U.S.-based company headquartered in Seattle, but that is a media company, and of course, that's another industry heavily regulated in China. In my opinion, too much so. I would love to see the regulations eased up significantly, but I'll stop myself on that criticism, because then we'll get into the censorship and Great Firewall issue, which really gets me going, and I'm happy to expand on that later. But with Eco, and this is where business is personal. I mentioned ROI3 Inc. was my mobile app development company, and through that experience, I was able to meet some amazing young Chinese college students at the local schools in Seattle University and University of Washington. And two of my interns, they were started off as interns. I've developed a relationship with them through that experience. And two of them, young ladies, were graduating from the University of Washington, and they had an idea about creating a magazine. And so they came to me and they said, we want to do this magazine. We need to create a business. We don't know how. Will you help us? And so to me, that was a easy decision of yes, because I had already developed the relationship with them. We trust each other. We know how to work with each other. I know I can be very demanding in business. I'd like to think I'm also fair and reasonable. They have their, little issues as well, being, very young and driven, but also not very experienced. And so I met with some of their friends that were going to be co-founders, and I said, all right, let's draft the articles of incorporation and let's form this business. So we formed it on, I think, November 6, 2016. I think it was the day that Trump was elected. It was the day that we formed it, just coincidence. And then we had our first magazine published. We had it published in China. It's a magazine the content is in Chinese, and the topic of our articles are culture and society. So issue number 1 came out in January. The distribution, because of the media restrictions in China, our magazine is primarily distributed outside of China. So North America, Europe, Australia, where there are Chinese readers. So that's a business that really got started because of people that I trust, people that were willing to work hard, that we can learn from each other, and also understanding risk. Businesses fail not because of lack of opportunity, they fail because of the risks. And most businesses fail, right? Only 9 out of 10 businesses, or only 1 out of 10, are successful, or after 5 years. So the idea was that we'll put a business plan together and we will identify the risks and we will do what we can to mitigate those risks. And you need luck, but you need to put your business in a position of being lucky. And as long as my co-founders understood all of that, I was going to be joining and supporting the ride. And so we've been able to do that. So we've put out a few issues, culture and society. The latest issue was had a particular theme on travel. And now we're pivoting into a digital platform. We did not have one in the beginning. We went old-fashioned, an actual paper copy, but we are now pivoting and expanding, and also taking on a creative agency and doing that aspect. So I have no idea where it's headed. That's part of the fun of entrepreneurship. I hope that we'll be profitable and will generate shareholder value. But it's been fun, and you got to take the chance. So that's one business. But because of the concerns of media censorship and restrictions, that's an issue. That's a barrier we encounter daily with doing business in China.
Yeah, for that business, I'm thinking, because media, right? You have articles published. I don't know how you make money through doing this, because there are so many different media online today, digitally, and everything's free.
Everything is free. How do we make money?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question, and trust me, when I went to my financial advisor and said, hey, I want to invest and co-found a media company, and my advisor says, oh, well, digital media. I said, no, this is a magazine. Digital is not part of the equation. This is going to be an actual paper copy. And he thought, you're crazy. Part of it is because everything is digital, that I have found that people love the paper copy. People, they remember it. Now it's got increased costs, but it's part of the marketing aspect of having the actual physical document, the actual physical publication. Our revenue model right now is on advertising. The magazine is free, so we've got advertising. That's our model. But the media industry, and you look at the global media industry, it is tough. You've had huge consolidation over the years because companies have not been able to be successful on their own. So they've consolidated, and it is the odds of success for us are very small. But I think we can be lucky and work hard to be successful. But it is going to be very difficult, and it's a long haul. I mean, when I'm the chairman of the board, and when we have our board meetings, and last month we had our virtually our annual shareholders meeting. I mean, I'm asking questions that's related to the vision of the company in 2030. I mean, I'm not worried about 2021 or 2022. 2020 has set us back. This was supposed to be a year of a major expansion and implementation of a new business strategy. That's on hold, of course. So we're moving that to 2021 and 2022. But I'm still looking, when I look at the future, I'm looking at 2030. So what it'll look like, I don't know. I'm hoping we'll be profitable of whatever it is. And, and maybe we will buy out, other companies and consolidate. It's an area, but you're right, Michelle. It is a tough business to differentiate yourself. And that's where we hope with the content. We hope the content on lifestyle and society is good.
Okay, I think it's time to take another very quick break. And when we come back, I want to get some of your advice to people who are looking into China if they want to invest there.
Are you interested in expanding your business to China, but don't know how to start? Are you wondering how to grow your sales in the China market and win over competition? Meet Michelle Zhou and her team at Pacific Technologies Consulting Group. Our consultants are U.S.-China experts and have all lived and worked in both the U.S. and China, with many years' experience in market entry strategies, management, and execution. We can help you find the right partners, develop opportunities, and grow your business in China. Please visit ptcgconsulting.com today.
We're back. You are listening to In China with Michelle Zhou, and I'm talking to Aaron Rose. So, Aaron, now continue where your investor hat and your consultancy hat. I want to ask you this question, which is related to the title, right, of this episode. Is now a good time to invest in China? No matter if yes or no, what's your advice to people?
Maybe. I mean, the answer, of course, is yes and no. Going on the positive of yes, the economy is growing, the wealth is growing, the per capita GDP is growing. People in the rural areas of China are getting wealthier. So you're seeing more wealth being created in China. So if you're going into particularly consumer services and products for consumers, it could be a very good opportunity to invest in China. The other side is, the negative side, the answer is no. It's not so much about, is it a bad time to invest in China? The question is, if there's 194 countries, if you look at the map of the world, or you've got a globe in your home, you can pick and choose what country to invest in, and there are other countries that you might get a better value for your investment. I'm thinking Mexico, particularly if you're an American investor. Mexico has problems politically, but they're growing economically, and there's a far fewer regulations in Mexico than there are in China. And so, India, again, India, the next few years got some headwinds, but if you're thinking about the next 10 or 15 years, I can kind of make a better case of investing in India than I would in China. But if you're intent on investing in China, because it is a big population, and again, the consumer market is growing, there's still some of the challenges that exist, as I mentioned earlier: IP protection, contract enforceability. Those are the big issues. The foreign exchange risk, there's still some, I don't know if people want to use the word manipulation of the currency of the renminbi, but it's not as freely convertible as I would like it to be. It's much better. The PBOC, People's Bank of China, has done a much better job in letting the yuan fluctuate based on market conditions. But it's still, forex risk is still a risk. And so those are some of the challenges. But if you are well aware of the challenges, it depends what you're investing in. So to take your question a little bit deeper, if you're looking to take your American business or your European business to China, candidly, that's a tough one. That is, again, if you're looking about financial opportunity, Southeast Asia particularly, I would say go to Vietnam, go to Indonesia, go to Malaysia, far fewer restrictions, growing economically, you're going to have headaches, but there are going to be fewer headaches than going to mainland China. But if you have the opportunity to invest in a Chinese company, that might be the better opportunity. This week's Economist has a great article about Tencent and how Tencent, which is publicly traded, on a couple of exchanges that Westerners can buy stock in, like in Hong Kong. Tencent is really the global player in gaming. I mean, they're known for WeChat, but this article in The Economist was about gaming, and they really have investments in gaming all over the world. And one of the points of the article was that as a global player, they're not getting the criticism from American governments like the U.S. and Western Europe like Huawei is getting. And how is Tencent able to do it? And so there are Chinese companies that I think you could invest in China in the next few years. But again, you can bifurcate that between publicly traded companies that have some level of disclosure that's required versus the private held companies where disclosure has always been a problem and it continues to be. So if you're aware of those risks and you have the stomach and appetite for those risks, why not?
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate your approach is looking at both sides and not just the surface. You really systematically approach these questions and provide a framework for people to think about the risks as well as the opportunities. Thanks so much for all these great sharing and your advice. I think today that's about it. We talked about is now a good time to invest in China. And Aaron, you shared a lot of knowledge as well as your own experience about China with us. I really appreciate your time as well as your knowledge sharing here. I would highly recommend our audience to check out Aaron Rose's blog. The blog name is Solutions for Sustainable World. You'll find a lot of very useful information there. And you can go to the website roi3.blogspot.com. You are listening to In China with Michelle Zhou. I look forward to talking to you again next time.
Thank you for tuning into In China with Michelle Zhou. Please join us for another edition next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Business Channel. We'll talk again next week.